We are blessed, I'll use that language, to have Nile Lundgren, who is the star of Owning Manhattan. He is by far the largest producer on the Sirhan, New York City team. He's an expert in luxury real estate. He also happens to be very into Bitcoin, which makes him the perfect person to talk about inflation hedges, real estate, and much more. So Nile, come on up here. He also dresses very well, which is always nice. He's got a pretty face. Just keep going with the compliments while we wait for him.
Thank you, Andy.
All right. So luxury real estate is.
Hello?
Can you? Luxury real estate is really a unique part of the market because you have a lot of money, and there are market dynamics that sometimes go with all of residential real estate, but there's also points in time where people are not buying lower end residential real estate, but people are still buying luxury real estate. How do you think about the difference between luxury and the rest of it?
Well, luxury real estate is a completely different asset class than I would say than the national real estate market. And I think you have to look at two different aspects of the national real estate market. We're looking at first-time home buyers who are very much constrained by interest rates. You know, those folks, they have to live by certain guidelines, right? They can only buy so much based on their income, right? And then conversely, you have the other side, which is luxury real estate. New York City is one of the predominant markets globally for luxury real estate. I sell a lot of luxury real estate. The thing about luxury is that it's not so dependent on where the rates are. A lot of the deals that I'm doing here in New York City, and I also do business in South Florida, those deals are done all cash. And a lot of times you would say, well, if they have money, why do they have to put the cash in there? Maybe they can get a loan. Sometimes they do, if they can make more money than 7% by keeping the money in. But when you're looking at, and I think one of the predominant points of this conversation is going to be real estate as a hedge against inflation. If you have cash and you keep the cash in the bank, over the last 4 years with our money printer that's just been printing, the purchasing power of the US dollar has decreased by 25%. So just keeping that cash in the bank is simply not a good idea. Equities markets is also something that would be a good idea as serves as a hedge against inflation. But specifically for this conversation, it's real estate. So you put the money into real estate. There's one really good example, we spoke about it earlier, and I'm just taking the ball and running with it. But I did a deal, I think it was 2021, right as the money printer started going in America. And one of my clients, he bought a property for $34 million from me. And I was like, well, what's your plan? And he said, the reason why I'm buying real estate right now is simply as a hedge against inflation, because I know what's going to happen. He's very educated. He has a whole team. He said, what we're going to do is we're going to buy this asset. As soon as we buy the asset, then we're going to take out a loan against it. And that loan is going to be an assumable mortgage, meaning that anybody else that comes in and potentially buys that property, he can assume that mortgage and give them the locked-in rate of 3% versus a new buyer coming in and having to deal with the challenges of a 6 or a 7% asset. And that really opened my eyes by doing that transaction with a highly sophisticated gentleman. And I learned that, wow, you can really protect your money, sort of like you would in Bitcoin with real estate. And the way that you do that is if you have cash, forget about the loan, you park it in, and then you wait. And he did that. I would say now if he asked me to sell it with an assumable mortgage, it's probably going to be worth about $50 million. Now, if he didn't have that assumable mortgage and somebody had to spend 7% to finance, it's probably in the 40 to 42 range. So by making that very smart play, he was able to play with the arbitrage of inflation with real estate. Very interesting.
So 80% of millionaires in America come from owning real estate. Most of them could not. And they could not tell you any details about inflation. How do you all talk to clients about what to expect? And how is that entering into maybe the less sophisticated buyers who still are buying luxury, but how are they using that as a calculation for what should I pay now, how long should I hold, or are there certain things that I should look for to know when to sell, etc.?
There's different types of buyers, so that's a great question. The first type of buyer is somebody who's going to live there. Primary residence, they're buying real estate so that they could live there, have a house over their head. Those people, they're not too concerned with flipping or what's the rate of return. So I don't really, like, those people, the conversation is a little bit different. It's more like, does this home work for you? Does the monthly cost work for you with a loan and with the common charges and carrying costs are? And when you deal with, something that's a little bit different on the luxury side, those people, like I said earlier in that example I gave you down in Miami, they're looking very specifically about how they can use real estate as a hedge. So another thing that's really great when I'm looking at, especially people who are looking to invest, meaning you buy a piece of real estate and then you get somebody to rent it out, right, an investment property. Well, with inflation, so comes the cost of living. It goes up, right? And we've been living in that time. So rents, I've had a property that I always rent out for an owner. At COVID, I rented it for $8,000 a month. Now I'm renting it for $15,000 a month. So if you're looking at it from basically an asset standpoint, with inflation making the cost of living or rent going up, that also increases the value of the property. So they're looking at it in a bunch of different ways, and it depends on who am I speaking to. I deal with a lot of sophisticated folks in the luxury real estate side. I deal with people that buy multifamily and just cash flow. And then there's like the first-time home buyers who are buying it specifically for themselves. And each one is a different conversation.
So you and I, you were kind enough to take me to Central Park Tower. And I've been in a lot of different apartments. Some of them are people that I know that own them. Sometimes I've just been going to see them, whatever. I've never been in an apartment where as I stood in it, my stomach hurt. This one is so high in the air. It's 1,400 feet in the air.
1,400 feet.
It is the highest residence in the world.
Yes.
And while you're in the apartment, the helicopters fly lower than you. So if you've never been in an apartment and looked down and seen the helicopter, I can tell you it's actually not as fun as you think. But the person who's going to live there is not going to look down. They're just going to look out over Central Park. The property was listed at one point, 250, 200, whatever, a lot of money. We've never seen properties in the U.S. 10 years ago listed for these prices. They just keep getting bigger and bigger. We have seen monster sales of these kind of high-end luxury buildings. Is it just up and to the right and we should expect these prices to get bigger? Like eventually will there be $1 billion residence sale in New York City? Or how are you guys thinking about this as a team and kind of planning for the future?
Absolutely great question. I think that luxury real estate is having another category spliced off. And that category is 100 million plus. And that's where you have a lot of the folks like Jeff Bezos, who just keeps buying up lots for 100 million, 80 million down in South Florida. We have Ken Griffin, Citadel, all these guys who are making purchases north of $100 million. And that is a completely separate asset class, right? These are the folks that have made hundreds of millions of dollars, whether it's they're the owners of the company or through the stock that they own, and then they're taking that money and they're saying, all right, I can keep all of it in, equities, and sometimes that's good, but you want to spread your debt around or your investments around. You don't want to have all Bitcoin. You don't want to have all equities. You don't want to have only, single family. There's also the luxury side of it, and the luxury side of it is, I think, is a very insular to a lot of these macro conditions globally. Even though there's chaos going on everywhere in the world, Jeff Bezos is still buying. So that is a whole separate asset class, and that's something that we're really starting to understand. New York City, we had the Amman trade north of 100 million recently. That was a little bit of a fugazi deal because it was the owner.
Let's talk about that one. The Amman, obviously people know the hotels. There's a building here in Midtown. The developer bought it for himself?
Yeah.
Okay.
So
how much did he pay?
I think it was 130 million for that one.
Okay.
So north of 100, which is great. And I think what that does is it gives the market the indication that, hey, New York City is still strong. As soon as that happens.
Because on that one, he's got investors. So if he went to and said, I'm buying it for $1, they'd be like, no way. So there has to be some sort of at least halfway believable market clearing price.
Right.
For the investors to say, okay, that's enough of a return, but we're not going to get upset.
Right. And If you're gonna ask me, I think the penthouse at Central Park Tower, built by Extel, I mean, it's 17,000 feet, it's a triplex, it has the largest outdoor terrace in the world. I think that's a much better buy, location-wise. I spend time at the Alma, I always have cigars with friends there. I love it, but I don't think it's really on the level that Central Park Tower is. But regardless, there is a market, and I think that by him doing that, it's strengthening New York City. One thing about New York City is that this is New York. As much as you want to write it off, as much as you want to say, oh, New York City is dead, let's talk about Manhattan. This is a fixed set of land. They're not building any more land, right? Every skyscraper that goes up means that there's just a little bit less that people can capture. And that's why I would consider it similar to Bitcoin, specifically in Manhattan, because it is a finite asset. Bitcoin has 21 million. Real estate in Manhattan has so many square miles to build on. And for that reason, as much as the general marketplace in the national outlook is kind of trending like this because rates are so high, New York City is still marginally up. It's up 3% from a year ago. So that alone is why I like real estate, specifically in Manhattan, because it's a hard asset. It's as hard as the bedrock that it's built on. If you look at other global markets, and I deal with a lot of different brokers from around the world, Dubai, for example, I speak to a lot of Dubai brokers. They're like, oh, Dubai is great, we love Dubai. And I'm like, yes, I like Dubai too, but it's just sand. We could keep building for ages and ages and ages, do it for 1,000 years, and there's gonna be more and more towers, and that's great. But when you have a fixed supply, and when I show those Dubai brokers a property like the penthouse at Central Park Tower, they're like, oh, well, I'm sure another one can go up. I'm like, actually, all the air rights are built here. This is it. Because they're used to, oh, another tower is going to go up, another tower is going to go up. But in New York, it's a very specific asset, and they're, in this particular case, being south of Central Park, having views like that, there's no other assets like it.
Let's use New York City as the example because it's probably the market that you spend the most time in. But how are people thinking about things outside of real estate in a city that affect real estate? So, for example, in New York, there's taxes, there's crime, there's the migrant crisis, there's all these other components to it. But real estate sales are up, right? Prices are up. And so is that just a function of supply demand, there's constricted supply, so prices go up, consistently? Or are there other things that you're hearing from clients as they're coming in looking for places in New York?
So remember, real estate in New York City is up marginally, okay? And I think it's gonna go up a lot more from here, especially considering there's certainty in the market with the presidential election. A lot of my international investors over the last 6 months with how the Justice Department here in New York City went after Trump, they were a little scared. The international markets were like, well, maybe we should invest in Dubai. It's not fixed, but at least there's no red tape or threat that my apartment that I just buy for $100 million is gonna get seized, right? So that's why I think New York, as much as you could say about anything else, is as insular as it gets, and I couldn't be more bullish right now. 2 months ago, this conversation might have been a little bit different, but right now, based on the certainty in the market, we know who the president is going to be, we know that the markets are going to rip, the markets are already ripping, probably as we're sitting here right now. Bitcoin is at an all-time high. New York City real estate isn't, but I think with rates coming down, I think with all of the traction that we're seeing north of 100 million and all these other different properties, whether it's in South Florida or New York City, I think that trend is going to continue in a very big way.
Now, you work with Ryan Serhant. You guys have exploded onto the scene. It's the fastest growing real estate brokerage in the country. How are you guys doing this? Why is it different?
Well, that is, first off, it's an absolute pleasure to work with Ryan Serhant, and if any of you guys have seen the show Owning Manhattan, it's very clear that we are a dynamic firm. What I would say the most interesting part about being at Serhant is the fact that they have a video aspect to it. Every listing that I get, I make a video for. So if you have a video on a listing, in general, you get 400% more inquiries about the listing. So what makes us so dynamic is that, yeah, you could hire an older firm that's been around for 200 years. They're gonna do maybe some print ad stuff in the New York Times and hope somebody gives them a call. But we're out there on YouTube, on Instagram, on TikTok, and we're making that digital push with the actual media around the property. It's just not like an image and then it disappears, and then another image and that's the video. We're walking around, we're talking about the property, and that creates people to become engaged. They want to look at the listing, and then they see it online, and then they see me, and then they see the show, and then they come to the tour, and they're like, oh my God, I love you, I love the show, I really want to buy this. So I think that exposure and the ability for us to create that type of content around our listings has given us the opportunity to really leapfrog a lot of the older style brokerages and competitions because of our media forward presence.
What's the worst part of working there?
You know, no one ever told me that it would be like being in a rocket ship and they just say, all right, kid, good luck. And I'm like, what? And there's just so many opportunities. When I worked at the previous firm I was at for 6 years, and it's one of the biggest firms in the city, you know, I had time. I would have my couple deals and that was it. Now, I don't have really any time. I mean, I'm filming season 2 for Owning Manhattan right now. I filmed for 8 hours on Monday, 4 hours on Tuesday, 6 hours on Wednesday, 2 hours yesterday. Now I'm here doing this, and then I'm gonna be working all weekend. So as much as I love it, you know, I don't really have too much of a personal life, but the good thing is I just turned 40. When I was 30, I had a great time and traveled all around the world. I got that out of the way. Now I'm laser focused on the opportunity that's at hand, and that's now to take what I have, all the TV stuff, all the deals that I've closed, and leverage that to become #1 in New York.
What has changed after the show was so popular?
So the show, you know, you never really know what's going to happen.
I knew it was going to be a hit. I knew you. I was like, this is going to be a home run.
Anthony knows, and I really appreciate that. And thank you for your belief in me. And to be honest, I didn't really know. You don't know how it's going to get cut up. I filmed all those scenes, but remember, there's a bunch of people that were on the show that didn't even make the cut. You know, so as much as I believe in what I could do, I didn't really know. But I'll tell you, it's been a rocket ship. I mean, I've been securing listings all day long. I'm now working heavily in the new development space where I represent towers on Park West. It's one building I just got is 15 West 96th Street. It's a $100 million sellout. I don't know if that opportunity would have came if I didn't, or I wasn't on the show. I just pitched another new development for 182 units on the east side. I'm pitching 45 units next week in central Harlem. It's just like every day, and I'm just building my team. So the biggest challenge I have now is how do I deal with absorbing all of this? I certainly can't do it all myself. So, you know, as much as I'm doing the filming and I'm executing the business, I am also figuring out who am I going to hire, how am I going to scale, who's going to handle my operations, who's going to be the head of new development, how can I do pre-sales over here, let's get this person trained up on that. So I'm working overtime right now to secure all the people that I need on my team to allow me to execute and scale to be #1 here in New York.
Now, as you move from, hey, I have one listing, even if it's Central Park Tower, whatever, doing towers where if you sell everything, it's $100 million, $150, $200 million, what changes in your strategy? Right? There's a lot of people here who, folks like you, they want to have as a customer, a user, a client, etc., their product, service, whatever. Like, what is changing in your business, and maybe what are the things that you're looking for that you're like, hey, we need new technology, we need new products that are going to help us be better?
Technology and products, I think, are always important, but as much as I love tech, I'm like a big Excel guy. You know, as much as I'm on TV and I love being out and meeting people and I have a great personality, I'm kind of a nerd. So I spend a lot of time making sure that every aspect of the tower is logged in some way, shape, or form. And then that's how I can look at it, because I have multiple projects that I'm working on at once. So I have everything logged in my spreadsheets and different tabs, so I can keep track on the amount of visitors, what the current budget is for marketing, staging, advertising, Instagram, Facebook, whatever it may be. And then I use those spreadsheets to then make educated decisions about where to go in the future. So tech is important, but I'm kind of an old school, traditional guy, and I think that's how I've been able to really scale, is because I have everything in a specific place and it lives there instead of in my brain. If it lived in my brain, I'd literally explode.
Talk a little bit about everything else that goes into the sales process. You are starting to, one, build out a team, two, you're getting tons of inbound. You're big on Instagram. You're getting big on a lot of these channels. You have the show. What are the things that you now are having to build from a process standpoint that is changing in the business?
I would say one of the main focuses, and I think, I really appreciate you, when we were texting months back, you're like, hey, you need to, go on the, Squawk Box or NBC or whatever it is, CNBC or Fox Business, because everybody's on Instagram. That's a very saturated place. And I took what you said by heart, and even being here today, this is one of my really big goals is, I spoke at the New York City Real Estate Expo about a month ago. I was in Vegas 2 months ago speaking at the Inman Conference in front of 5,000. I'm here right now. So for me, one of my main focuses is to create that top of funnel. And it starts with Netflix, but then it's supported by me being on Fox Business, or me going on CNBC or Bloomberg, or sitting down with you on your podcast, or sitting here and talking to all you beautiful folks about residential real estate. And that is helping me build my brand so that the real goal is to be doing sort of like what Ryan does. I just got my first opportunity, and I'll say it here, to speak in an arena in Portugal in about 10 months. I think it's September 4th. They're going to pay for my flight, pay me to do it, and I have to give a keynote speech. And that's really where I feel like I have a lot of natural charisma, right? And I also know what I'm talking about. I've been doing real estate specifically for 6 years. I'm not just some kid that said, oh, let me watch a TV show and I think I can do that. Like, this is what I've been doing. I've been studying it. I went to NYU. I've taken accounting classes. I know how to model. And that's all the things that I've done on my own while I wasn't where I am. And it allowed me to get to where I am. And now that I'm here, it's with my sincere joy to share it with everybody else that I possibly can. So thank you.
I just want everyone to know he said Resi Club is better than all these other conferences.
It is.
Sorry, I don't know if you guys heard that. Last thing I got for you is, what are the investors that want to buy these properties? What are they trading off against? Are they saying I'm going to stay in cash? Are they saying, hey, I could buy this unit, or I could go and I could buy stocks, Bitcoin, commodities? Like, are they going through that and having a conversation with you to try to determine what is the opportunity cost?
Absolutely. Educating a client and talking about all the different factors is most important. For example, if somebody's looking to offload some Bitcoin, I work with a lot of big crypto guys, Bitcoin guys. Sometimes they like to offload. Sometimes they like to take loans against it. Sort of like if you have a Morgan Stanley portfolio, you could take a loan against it, an asset-backed line of credit, and you could purchase, and then you keep your assets. Or if it's somebody else who says, I think assets or securities are at an all-time high, let me pull 20% off, just trim off the top, and then you could use that cash to put as your down payment. So a lot of times when the stock market, like it is now, is at a high, I'm talking to folks about, all right, do I trim off of that and then use that to get 50% down so that the loan that I get at 7% is not as hard on a monthly basis? I think it really depends, but I'm happy to have all those conversations, and I'm fluid in it, so it really helps me execute, educate them, and close more deals.
So, if any of you have a conference, Nile is a free agent. He'll come speak at your conference. He said, where can somebody go to find you?
Yeah, you can find me online, NileLundgren.com, and my handle across all channels, whether it's X, YouTube, Twitter, TikTok. X and Twitter are the same, and Instagram are at Nile Lundgren. I'd be happy to connect with all of you and really appreciate this opportunity, Anthony.
Thank you so much for doing it.
Thank you.
Nile Lundgren, everyone. All right, Lance is coming up here and he's going to introduce the next speakers.
Questions in residential real estate is how we can unlock the market, unlock inventory. And I couldn't think of two better people to come have this discussion than two of the most interesting entrepreneurs in the space. I'll let you both introduce yourself.